Now we are going to see about exception handling in Java. What do you mean by an exception? How to handle an exception? What are the different ways to handle an exception? And what are the different exceptions available in Java? Okay, first of all, what do you mean by an exception? An exception is nothing but it is a problem that arises during the execution of a program. An exception is nothing but it is a problem that arises during the execution of a program. Exceptions, it affects the normal flow of the program. The normal flow of the program will be affected and there will be an abnormality in executing the program. Okay, so for example, what are the cases in which an exception can occur? An exception can occur in different reasons. It can occur for different reasons. For example, suppose if the user has entered invalid data, it is the data which is not relevant to that. For example, suppose for number, if he enters any string value, then it is an exception. A file needs to be opened, cannot be found. Suppose if I am trying to open a file that does not exist, that the file does not exist, then there will be an exception. And suppose if I don't have any network connection in the middle of a program, in such cases, that is if I lose the connection in the middle of the communication, then that will be also a type of exception. Okay, so what are the types of exception? Now we will see what are the types of exceptions. Usually we will be having two types of exceptions. One is compile time exception and another is the runtime exception. So exception is nothing but any abnormal condition that occurs during the execution of a program. It may be anything which disturbs the execution of the program. So the compile time execution is also called as checked exception. The runtime exception is also called as unchecked exception. So what do you mean by checked exception? That is, a checked exception is one that occurs at the compile time. That is, while compiling the program, suppose if we get any exception, then it is called as the checked exception. Whereas in the case of unchecked exception, it occurs during the runtime. An unchecked exception occurs during the runtime of a program. Now we will see an example. So on seeing this example, we can understand more better. So that is the file reader. It is the name of the class which is used to read the content of the file. We have to import the file first. That is, we have to use import java.io.file, then import java.io.fileReader. File reader is nothing but it is a class. On using that we can read the content of the file. Okay, so in the main the class name is file not found demo. That is, they have given the name as file not found demo. You see here file is the keyword. What a capital F file is the keyword. I am using the another object name as file is equal to new file of. Okay, here I try to read the file reader using the file reader class. I am trying to read the file. That is, the file is, what is the content inside the file? That is file.txt. I am trying to read the content of the file.txt. So this is an example for compile time error. That is checked error. You assume, suppose if I don't have any file.txt in my directory, then I will be reported an error as below. You see, that is Java C file not found. That is, there is no such file. And the file it will display for me. Okay, that is, it will show an error in that stage. File reader fr is equal to new file reader of. I will get an exception like this. So this is an example for compile time. So on compilation time itself, it will check whether the file exists or not. If the file is there, it will read the content. If there is no file, then it will display the error message, exception. Okay, the next one is the unchecked exception. Unchecked exception is also called as runtime exception. Suppose if an exception arises in the runtime, that is while giving the values or while printing at the last time, that is after the source code is converted to object code, and while running if I get an error, then they are called as unchecked exception. Okay, so you see this example. Here I have used one array called num. So inside the array, so what is the size of this array? I have stored 4 elements, 1, 2, 3, 4. So normally the size of the array will be here 4, 0 to 0, 1, 2, 3. So I am having only up to 3. Suppose if I try to print the element in num of 5, there is no such element. That is, this array size is only limited to 4. But if I am trying to print the 5th element, then I will be getting an exception. That is, java.lan array index out of bounds. That is, the array size is exceeded. I have given only array size as 4 in this case, but here the array size is, I am trying to print the 5th number. So I am getting the error as array index out of bound exception in Java. Okay, so these are the common type of errors. So error exception handling is nothing but any abnormal condition that occurs during the execution of a program. An exception in Java may be either of two types. It may be either a compile time error or a runtime error. A compile time error is also called as a checked exception, and a runtime error is also called as an unchecked exception. So example for compile time error is, suppose if I am trying to open a file that does not exist, then it is an example for compile time error. And in the case of runtime error, suppose if I want to print the array element, 5th array element, suppose if the total array size is only 4, and if I am trying to print the 5th element or 7th element, then I will be getting the error as array index out of bound exception. Okay, now we will see the exception hierarchy. So all the exceptions are available in java.lan.exception class. Okay, the java.lan is the base class for all that. So from java.lan I will be having the object class, and from below the object class inherits the throwable class, and the throwable class I will be having either errors and exceptions, and the exceptions runtime exceptions and other exceptions. So this is the hierarchy. That is, usually the exceptions have two main classes. Okay, one is IO exception and another is the runtime exception. These are the various this is the hierarchy in which the exception class works. Then what are the various methods available to get the exception? That is, simply I am telling, I will be having a method called string get message of. So the get message of method is used to get the type of exception that arises during the execution. So the method name is get message of. So on using this method, I can see for what type of exception has arisen in my program. Similarly, we are having different methods as throwable, get cast, string to string, stack trace. Like that we are having various methods. Okay, so just we have identified an exception is there. Then how we can rectify it? So in Java we will be having the hierarchy in the sense that is, suppose if I assume there will be an error, there may be an error somewhere, then I can give that particular code within the try block. So whatever I will be given in the try block will be searched for an error, will be checked for an error or exception, and if there is any exception, it will be thrown and it will be catched by the catch block, and the catch block handles the exception and it will display for what reason the exception has arisen. Okay, so now we see catching exception, that is, the try block and catch block are interrelated. Whatever the thing I doubt whether there may be an exception, I can give within the try block. So you see this here, I have used the try block, I have given some code and I